Little story. I was actually stalling our great friend. We'll call him Mr. Content. Congressman Fulcher joining us now here on KIDO Talk Radio. Congressman, how you been?
You know, Kevin, I'm doing really well, and I appreciate your comments just before taking me on here. And there's a reason why I like to communicate on your show, and there's a reason why I like to have access to your audience, because they know that you do put things out there. You are fair. You do allow anyone to come out, be heard, and have kind of a free discussion in the arena of ideas. And some of the other outlets you mentioned, I don't openly communicate with, and that's why. So thank you for doing what you do. You're much appreciated.
Well, thank you for being a member of the Yap Yap Club. We appreciate that.
Okay, good.
You know, Congressman, let's get to the seriousness of the issues. You're a working person. You've always worked. You've always loved Idaho. A lot of people, they're working more and getting less. Is there anything that the government is working on to make their lives better? Could we hear about, spending this, spending that, Bidenomics? You're on the front lines. What's going on?
Well, I think one of the common misconceptions is that if there's a problem, the government's going to fix it, or the government can fix it, or the government should fix it. Kevin, the longer I'm in this game, and it's been a few years now, this is my 5th year in Congress. I was in the legislature for a few years before that, state legislature. The more I realize is that a lot of the problems that are being caused is because the government has jumped in. Our founders envisioned, and quite frankly, both biblically and constitutionally, the guidance is that families, that individuals, that individual people are to be in charge, are to be the pinnacle of governance, not some government-based program. And over the course of time, even in our lives, these our families and our churches and our communities have been replaced by some government program. I've got a mother, for example. She's 94 years old, and she's reminded me on multiple occasions that she remembers when there was no health and welfare department. There was no health and welfare programs. And I'm not saying that that's what we need to just outright return to, but my point is that it used to be that you and I and our families, our communities, our churches, the community clubs, those were the ones who took care of those health and welfare related problems, and people were much more independent. Instead, now we have a program for this and a program for that. And if you aren't working, then, that's okay. There's unemployment seemingly for an unending amount of time. And all that does over the course of the long haul is it penalizes those who do work in favor of those who choose not to. And I do choose not to. There's always going to be some who need help because they really can't work. But that's really the exception, not the rule. So honestly, to answer your question, I think the government's the problem much more of the time than actually the solution.
Well, and obviously you're there on Capitol Hill. Congress is back in session. Obviously, we've got a lot of disclosures going on, and you're a big supporter of law enforcement. And yet we have this troubling story concerning the Secret Service, along with several troubling stories coming out of the FBI and how they treated the last administration compared to this administration. Your reaction to the Secret Service saying they can't find who had the coke, and, of course, our faith in law enforcement, which is crucial to keeping our republic stable.
I think the Secret Service has a very good idea if they don't know outright where that cocaine came from. And they're either by their own leadership's choosing or by someone's direction, they're just not issuing full disclosure. I'm not saying there's outright lies, but I'm saying that there's certainly not full disclosure. I mean, you've been in the White House. I've been in the White House multiple times. Even for a member of Congress, this is not a place where you just walk in. This is not just a place where you are not being watched all the time. There's nothing you do, there's nothing you say that's not on camera, that's not being recorded, that's not being watched. And so I just don't buy it, first of all, and I will take that a step further. We have a significant problem right now, Kevin, with the intelligence community as a whole. The intelligence community, I'm talking about CIA, FBI, NSA, Secret Service. These groups, who frankly, I lump together because I can't tell you where the responsibility of one ends, the other one picks up. I really can't, and most people can't. But they have grown independently of oversight. They have grown independent of accountability. And I think there's a lot of people, a lot of errors to blame for that, because this has not happened overnight. But these intelligence community organizations run almost a parallel source of governance. They operate the way they want. They do what they want. And for the most part, they've been unaccountable. And quite honestly, in particular, right now, the FBI seems to be leading the charge when it comes to suspicious activities. We've got a problem. And there's a very low level of trust, both in Congress and by the people of the United States.
Our great friend, Congressman Fulcher, joining us here. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Congressman, obviously, the Democrats were rocked by comments from Congresswoman Jepal the other day. They're saying she apologized for saying some anti-Semitic remarks. Obviously, we are pro-Israel. We are pro keeping the peace and, of course, solidly supporting our great ally there. But yet you have these comments from some of these members within the Democratic Party that seem to be alarming. Imagine if a Republican had said anything of that nature.
Of course. And, this is not the first time. It's not going to be the last time that a sitting member of Congress makes a statement like that. Congresswoman Jayapal made a statement here a day or two ago, and then she kind of tried to back it up. Well, she meant it. And this isn't the first time things have come out of her mouth this way. This is what she believes. And you can tell that by who she supports, who she associates with, what her personal belief system is, her other related votes on issues that impact the Middle East, Israel. She's not the only one. We had a vote last night reaffirming support of Israel. We had nine members, as I recall, who voted no, and she was one of them. And so I think we all know the score. And I wish, if she's going to take that position, then okay, just take that position. Don't try to back it up. Don't try to soft talk it. Just say what you believe, and we'll just deal with it. But we have the president of Israel here today, and there's going to be a joint session of Congress. It's going to be interesting to see if she even shows up. If the nine who voiced their concern about commitment to American-Israeli relations even show up for that speech. But that's the circumstances we're dealing with here.
And again, not to do the squad here with Congressman Fulcher, but then you got Tlaib labeling Israel an apartheid state in a floor speech. It is strange. Let me go to the meat and the potatoes. You're always looking out for, obviously, natural resources and farmers. Any news this week concerning our great friends in ag that are up right now? Probably been up for 3 or 4 hours listening to you right now, Congressman Fulcher.
Yeah, and so there's a number of things going on there. First of all, every 5 years, Congress deals with what's called the Farm Bill. And it's just a massive, massive piece of legislation. And it just comes around every 5 years. This year, it's almost $1.5 trillion. And so that's in front of Ag Committee. And parts of that go through Natural Resource Committee. And the thing I wanted to point out about that, Kevin, is over the course of time, this has morphed into, in my view, much more of a food assistance bill than it is a real farm bill. Of the nearly $1.5 trillion that is associated with this bill, 84.5%, almost 85%, goes to SNAP, or the food stamp or food assistance program. In my view, it's no longer really a farm bill. This is a food assistance bill. Do our farmers get something out of it? Yeah, they do, and they want it. They need it, and what we attempt to do that. And the purpose of this is to try to keep the field of competition level playing field, so that we don't have foreign producers undercutting our own farmers with government subsidies. And so, that's what we're attempting to do generally. But this thing has morphed into an absolute beast, like so many things coming out of Washington, D.C. So that's on the docket right now. We're also taking a look at a number of programs that are being being funded but not authorized. And I'm learning some of this right now, too. The Endangered Species Program right now is up in the Natural Resource Committee. This hasn't been reauthorized by Congress. I believe they said 1984. It gets money every year because the appropriations process goes ahead and just, responds and appropriates money towards its budget request. But in terms of true authorization by the germane committee responsible for it, in this case, Natural Resource, it hasn't been authorized for decades. And so, thankfully, we've got some chairmen now, Natural Resources, Energy and Commerce. Those are the two main committees that I sit on. They're taking a look at these and go, wait a minute here. Before we do appropriations, isn't it appropriate we take a look at these programs and say, is this really what we want? Has it grown into something that it was never intended to be? If so, does this need to be right-sized? So, thankfully, some of that stuff is coming back around. We've got a long way to go, but that's what's on the docket right now.
Thank you, Congressman Fulcher. More coming up with our great friend, Congressman Fulcher, next. We're going to talk China and agriculture in Idaho next. Stay with us.
KIDO Talk Radio.
Hey, to become the next generation of innovators, entrepreneurs, and creators, we're going to need some things.
Like a high-speed internet connection that can turn my ideas into reality.
Like the skills to become the world's most powerful coder.
Like the tools to start my sustainable shoe business.
You just heard some of the millions of students Comcast is supporting through Project Up, our comprehensive initiative and $1 billion commitment to open doors for the next generation so they can build a future of unlimited possibilities. Learn more at comcast.com/projectup.
We're always right. KIDO Talk Radio.
Through Project Up, Comcast is helping to build a future of unlimited possibilities, from connecting people to the internet to opening doors for the next generation of innovators, entrepreneurs, and storytellers. Our goal is to create a future that benefits generations to come. That's why we're committing $1 billion to reach tens of millions of people with the skills, resources, and opportunities they need to succeed in a digital world. Project Up, building a future of unlimited possibilities. Learn more at comcast.com/projectup.
Wake up with Kevin Miller. Ride home with Lars Larson. Only on KIDO Talk Radio.
Back at it. Our great friend, Congressman Fulcher, joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Congressman, we're always talking about China and the Chinese threat concerning technology. But what about our farmland? We've heard about China buying farmland around military facilities, also buying farmland, perhaps even to produce their own food and send it back to China. As a champion of ag, or should we be concerned about this, sir?
Yeah, and as Americans, we should be concerned about it. We got a country by the name of China, Republic of China, that is an expansionist country. They are openly driving to be the number one superpower and supplant the United States in the world. And they are doing many things strategically to be able to do that without firing a shot. And one of them is insurgency within our own borders. We have found numerous incidences where there has been procurement of land, sometimes close to strategic sites like military bases or critical facilities like the SpaceX or other critical facilities across the country. And, their actions would exhibit that they're not always the purest of intent. And so steps have been taken, both state levels in various states and now at the federal level, to try to insulate against that. But we just need to understand who they are. They're an expansionist, aggressive enemy of the United States, and we need to act accordingly.
Speaking of acting accordingly, and you've talked about this, obviously you care about the military. We've got some great military facilities here. The comments by the president recently that we're running out of ammunition. Yeah,
well, let's, look, the president needs to look no further than in the mirror. for those kind of problems. Because why are we? Well, because number one, we've been giving a lot of it away, and in some cases selling it. And I understand that, but our reserve levels are alarmingly low on that front. The other reason is we have banned ourselves from harvesting a lot of the critical minerals, a lot of the critical components to replenishing that. Lead, for example, for use in ammunition. We've banned ourselves from being able to harvest that. So where do we go to get it? China. And we banned ourselves because we think there's some tremendous environmental impact for that. So what do? We go buy it from our enemies, number one, and the Chinese, number two, who have no environmental precautions. So, and they live on the same planet we do. So it's a lose-lose scenario. We are low on military supplies. This last NDAA, the National Defense Authorization that we passed out of the House here last week, does address that from a fiscal standpoint, I believe in a responsible way, because we got rid of some bad stuff too. But now it's got to get through the Senate. We're working on that. And then the president has to sign off on it. So we're attempting to address that, but the president and his policies are largely to blame for the circumstances we're in.
Well, and that's where you would think the whole woke military thing, they would just finally figure out it's time to boot that. But the idea of funding the woke, and then, as a champion of pro-life, Congressman Fulcher, it's amazing they've decided to make the military the next battleground for abortions.
Yeah, and so therein lies where my personal efforts were on NDAA and continue to be as we try to get this through the Senate. To your point, Kevin, over the recent years, the military has embraced policies whereby it's a way for abortions to be paid by the government through military channels and relocating people so that can take place in the appropriate state at the government expense. We got rid of that in the House version of the NDAA, and that was part of my effort. And on the whole woke front, we were actually had policies in there to pay for transgender surgeries, sensitivity training, and this is for a fighting force. That is, and those policies, those activities are absolutely contrary to the very mission of a fighting force. Your military cannot directly reflect society because that's not its mission. Its mission is to create warriors. Its mission is to fight. Its mission is to protect. And, I'll take that debate with anybody. There's no room for that type of behavior, training, sensitivity. And you know what? The recruitment has proven that. Our recruitment efforts are so poor because the young men and women who are wired for that, they take a look at what they have to do, and they say, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to be part of this. And so they don't join. And so thankfully, at least on the House version of the NDAA, that got removed, and the funding associated with it got removed. Now we're trying to get the Senate to pass that as well. So that's where we stand.
Congressman Fulcher joining us. Congressman, anything else you'd like to share with us that we might not have covered, sir?
This week we've got the FAA Reauthorization that has to do, of course, with air travel. There's some sticky points about, not surprisingly, the airport right here that I'm looking out my window in my office in D.C., and I can see it from here. There's a big debate whether or not flights should be increased, the number of flights. A lot of members want that. Admittedly, it would be more convenient for me to get back and forth. But that's on the docket right now, and that's one of those big things. There's also the issue of what the Speaker talked about yesterday, two-tiered system of justice, and the potential of being more aggressive towards the Attorney General, doing an inquiry on him because he seems to be very, very preoccupied with pursuing Republicans, President Trump, but very uninterested in pursuing the Hunter Bidens and some of these other cases that there's strong evidence to suggest that those should be pursued. So anticipate that to come up in the coming days on the newsreel, Kevin.
Well, and one more sidebar, Congressman. Our great friend Congressman Fulcher joining us. our role in the next battle, they call Idaho the gem state, as you know, sir. But our natural resources, we're probably up there with the best in the world, and the ability to mine those natural resources for our own national security. Do you see how we're going to play a part in that? I mean, it's very underreported, but you have the lithium mine that could happen, couldn't happen, touch and go, these sorts of things. But we're a little off the radar with the national media, but with these big energy companies, they know there's a lot of incredible natural resources here in Idaho.
That's right, and Idaho is immensely blessed. We've got more wealth under our feet with all kinds of minerals and oil, by the way. It's not just minerals, natural gas, you name it, we got it, and we got plenty of it. We've got a couple of complications. Almost two-thirds of the land is federally controlled, so that adds a whole lot of complications that most states don't have. And we still have what has been incorrectly identified as the so-called environmental movement that says, we don't want to touch any of that. Well, I would argue, no, we are the real environmentalists because we are the ones who want to harvest that in a very responsible way. And unlike other countries, enemy countries that don't take that approach. So we have what we need. All we need is the access to it. And we are our own worst enemies on that front. Thankfully, we've got some help now. We've got even government entities like the Department of Defense. They're standing up and saying, hey, you know what? We've got this resource in Idaho. We have this resource in Arizona. We need to go after it because if we don't, we're going to have to continue to buy it from Russia and China. Yeah. And so there is some headway being made. It's very slow, but Idaho is blessed, and we're going to try to do what we responsibly can to access the critical components necessary right here in our home state of Idaho that we need.
Congressman Fulcher, I know you're very busy, but we really appreciate the weekly interview time, and we get so much out of it. We just want to thank you again, sir.
Right back at you, Kevin. Thank you so much. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.